She left me to die. I didn't stumble. I didn't get lost. It wasn't an accident. It was a choice. I remember the engine fading away, dust spiraling slow, and my daughter Lisa's silhouette catching me one last time in the rear view. No guilt, no hesitation. The sun burned so hard the air felt liquid, time itself seeming to melt with me. There, in the heart of the Arizona desert, I understood. Love can turn into a sentence, and the silence of the one who leaves can scream louder than 1,000 goodbyes. But before the tragedy, there were promises. Lisa insisted, "It'll be good for us, Mom. A fresh start." I wanted to believe, because mothers believe, even when instinct begs them not to go. I packed carefully, folded the clothes she liked, dabbed perfume as if scent could reconcile us. On the drive, the road stretched like a golden thread under the sun. Inside the car, the air was hot and heavy. The radio played an old song about forgiveness. She smiled, but it never reached her eyes. As the wind pushed through the window, I saw the silver necklace at her throat, the one I gave her at 15, engraved, "So you never lose your way from me." The gleam of the metal made me smile, never imagining it would be the last reflection of tenderness between us. Now I know, some journeys begin in love and end in revelation. If you're hearing me now, hit like, subscribe to the channel, and tell me, have you ever trusted someone so completely you didn't notice when love became a trap? Because this is the story of the day the sun judged me and the desert saved me. The Arizona sun was a blade. Heat rose off the asphalt, making the air tremble like the world itself was short of breath. Inside the car, silence thickened until each second stretched thin. Lisa drove with both hands locked on the wheel, sunglasses hiding a look I knew too well. The look of someone thinking far ahead, who decided the ending before the beginning. Her sweet perfume filled the cabin, but it turned my stomach. It was the same scent she wore at her father's funeral, and somehow it felt like an omen. The road was endless, slicing the desert into straight lines, no trees, no birds. The radio fizzed softly with a song about starting over. I tried to smile, to believe her words. "Mom, this will be good for us." But her voice sounded rehearsed, and even when she sat still, her body hummed with impatience. "Let's pull over," she said suddenly. "I want to take some pictures." She said it like it was casual, but urgency flickered in her movements. The car slowed and stopped where the wind dragged sand like razor blades. Heat made the horizon dance. I stepped out, adjusted my hat, and felt the sun hit my face like liquid fire. The ground was so hot each step felt like punishment. "Stand there, Mom. Face the sun," she asked, voice distant. I obeyed, still believing we were trying for something, that it was still us against the world. I walked to where she pointed, and the sound of my sandals on the ground was the last normal thing I heard. The silence after the car left wasn't absence. It was a roar of emptiness, a voiceless scream rising from the ground itself. The sun hammered the earth with divine fury, and the dry air clawed my throat with every breath. I, Grace Holloway, stood still for seconds that stretched into eternity. Then one step, then another. And then I ran. I ran until my lungs burned, until my legs begged for mercy, until her name spilled from my mouth as dust. "Lisa." The echo gave me nothing, only the broken sound of my own voice. The desert has no mercy. It only watches. The sand mirrored the sun like shattered glass, heat rippling in waves that made the horizon shiver. Sweat stung my eyes, my body grew heavy, my heartbeat stuttered. I searched for shade, a rock, a curve, anything. Nothing. The road we'd driven vanished as if it never existed. I dropped to my knees, the ground scorching through my skin. Despair came in layers. First fear, then rage, then emptiness. "Why?" I whispered, voice cracking. "Why, my daughter?" But the wind stole my question, swallowing even my words. Flashes of memory broke through the haze. Lisa as a child, running through the garden with ice cream on her cheeks. Lisa as a teenager, crying into my arms after heartbreak. Lisa as a woman, with that same look, the one I finally recognized as a lie. The pain was so deep it almost erased me. But through it came something sharp and clear. Panic wouldn't save me. Despair wouldn't bring her back. If I wanted to see another sunrise, I had to fight. Not for her, not even for hope, but to prove to myself that I still could. So I walked. No direction, no shadow, only instinct. The wind blew hot and salty, as if made of tears. I untied the scarf from my neck, wrapped it around my head, pressed the silver necklace to my chest. It burned, but that burn reminded me. I was still alive. I walked until the sun began to fall. Each step, a memory. Each memory, a reason to keep going. My body ached, but the mind finally woke. Then I realized something. The desert, for all its cruelty, was honest. It didn't deceive, didn't promise, didn't pretend to love, unlike the one who left me there. When the sky turned orange and purple, I sat on a stone and stared at the horizon. Loneliness was vast, but inside it, something moved. Not faith, resistance. And I knew, if the desert wanted to swallow me, it would have to fight for every grain of sand. Because the love she tried to destroy still lived in me. It just changed its name. Now it was called strength. As the sun sank behind the dunes, the desert changed its face. The same land that burned me now seemed to breathe. Shadows stretched long, and the wind, once cruel, turned cool and steady, sweeping clean the floor of the hell I had crossed. I sat on a rough stone, feet throbbing, hands trembling, feeling for the first time the true weight of abandonment. But I also realized something else. I was still alive, and that alone was a miracle. I reached for my chest and touched the silver necklace. The metal was cold, but pulsed faintly, as if something inside it was calling me back to myself. It was the necklace I had given my daughter at 15, the one she returned to me days before our trip. "I want you to wear it, Mom," she'd said with a smile I now understood, the smile of someone saying goodbye before betrayal. My fingers brushed the inscription on the back. "So, you never lose your way from me." Those words, once a promise, now sounded like prophecy. I laughed, a dry, cracked laugh that felt more like sobbing. "Looks like the one who got lost was you, Lisa." I held the necklace tightly and closed my eyes. Memories came in waves. Her teenage years, nights of fever, the diploma she held high with a grin, the first lie I caught and pretended not to see. Each memory whispered the same truth. You didn't fail. You loved. In that moment, I understood what despair had hidden from me all day. The necklace wasn't hers. It was mine. It reflected the woman who endures, who holds others up, who gets forgotten but keeps going anyway. I looked up. The first star appeared. Lonely, brave. The wind rose, brushing sand against my skin, and I felt it. The desert was listening. It was witnessing the birth of someone new. I scooped a handful of sand and let it slip between my fingers, whispering, "I'm still here." For the first time, it didn't sound like a plea. It sounded like a declaration. When night fell completely, the cold came like a blade. I tore a piece of fabric and wrapped it around my shoulders, the necklace swaying like a beacon. The moon rose, pale, distant, and its light caught the silver, creating a faint shimmer in the dark. I stared at that glow and understood. The necklace didn't remind me of Lisa. It reminded me of the woman I refused to lose. The desert, once my sentence, had become witness to my promise. I would survive. And clutching that piece of silver against my heart, I swore. The sun would rise again and find me alive, ready to discover why I still was. Night fell with cruel haste. The same sun that nearly killed me now left the world lifeless in its absence. The heat vanished as if ripped from the earth, and cold swept in, sharp, biting, crawling straight to the bone. Silence ruled everything, broken only by the wind sliding over the dunes. The desert doesn't sleep. It watches, tests, judges. And on that first night, I was both its prisoner and its proof. The stars looked like blades against the black sky, shining with indifference. I lay behind a rock, trying to hide from the wind, but it found every gap, through my sleeves, my hair, my thoughts. My body trembled, but I knew sleep meant surrender, and surrender meant death. I tore a strip of cloth, tied it around my arms and neck, the fabric scraping against cracked skin. My hands burned, my fingers stiffened, my mouth tasted like metal. Even air had to be rationed. I closed my eyes and counted slowly. 1, 2, 3, I whispered, remembering the breathing exercises I'd taught patients back when I was a nurse. The mind must command the body, not bow to it. Control the rhythm, Grace, I repeated, and the sound of my voice anchored me back to life. The wind carried ancient scents, dust, iron, the faintest hint of rain that never came. With every gust, I thought of Lisa, of the first time she slept alone, of the blanket she pulled to her chin, of the nights I promised to protect her from everything. The irony was bitter. Now I was the one alone on a cold floor, protecting myself from the daughter who had condemned me. The moon shifted, slow and merciless. Time stretched and twisted. My body screamed, but within the pain there was something new. Clarity. Despair wasn't the enemy anymore. It was fuel. When the cold became unbearable, I looked at the silver necklace. The moonlight pulsed on its surface. It was the only brightness in that endless dark. I touched it and whispered, "You're still here with me." Then I realized how true that was. Not the necklace, me. I was still there. The night dragged on, part torture, part revelation. When the wind paused for the briefest second, I heard it. The beating of my own heart, the sound of survival. The cold that once threatened to kill me began to teach instead. It said, "You've already lost everything you could. Now all that's left is to continue." The desert wanted to break me. But that frozen night, it gave me something no one else ever could. The certainty that I was unbreakable. When the sky began to pale, the world didn't look the same. The cold retreated, but the heat hadn't yet returned. It was that fragile space between two extremes. The air was still. The horizon, golden. I opened my eyes with effort. Every muscle screamed, lips cracked and bleeding. My body whispered enough, but my soul answered one more step. I pushed myself upright, knees shaking, dust clinging to my clothes. The moon was fading, pale, when the first ray of sunlight sliced across the sky. That's when I saw it, something glinting a few yards away, half buried in sand. For a moment, I thought it was a mirage, but the light persisted, calling. I staggered toward it, heart pounding. The sand sank beneath my feet, air thick as syrup. When I knelt down, I knew its shape before I even touched it. A cell phone. Blue case, faded flower, Lisa's. My pulse stopped. The world went silent. I wiped the screen with my sleeve. It flickered to life. The battery blinked red, the glass cracked, but one message glowed clear. "It's done. She won't be a problem anymore." I read it once, then again. Then again until the words carved themselves into my bones. They burned hotter than the sun. The desert spun around me. The truth wasn't accident, it was intent. The abandonment wasn't panic, it was a plan. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I sank to the ground, head spinning. Part of me wanted to scream, another wanted to weep, but neither won. Instead came silence. A cold, lucid silence, the kind that only exists when innocence dies. I looked up at the sky as the sun climbed, and I knew I wasn't lost anymore. I knew. I had been betrayed, not by weakness, but by will. And though it shattered me, knowledge itself was power. I pressed the phone against my chest, over the silver necklace. Two objects, one born of love, one of deceit. Between them, me, the space where truth finally fit. Light intensified, heat swelled. The desert, once a tomb, now felt like a mirror. It reflected exactly who I was, wounded, but standing. I took a breath and said to the wind, "You took everything from me, Lisa, but what's left is enough to bring me back." My voice carried across the dunes. No bird replied, but something inside me did. My heartbeat, stubborn and steady. The desert had tested me. The sun had burned me. Love had betrayed me. But that morning, I discovered that truth born of pain is the first step to freedom. And staring at that golden vastness, I made my vow. I would no longer be the woman left to die. I would be the woman who returned to live. The sun had already conquered the sky when I stood again. The heat returned with vengeance, and the desert, wild, alert, seemed ready to test whether I truly deserved to live. I tucked Lisa's phone inside my blouse, next to the silver necklace, and looked around. That's when I saw it. 2 faint, parallel lines etched into the sand, fading fast, stretching straight toward the horizon. Tire marks, the path she took to leave me. For a long moment, I didn't move. The wind was already beginning to erase them, sweeping grains of sand across the tracks like a secret being buried. I knew if I waited any longer, they'd vanish completely. So I closed my eyes, drew a breath of dry air, and began to walk. Every step burned. The soles of my feet throbbed, my body screamed, but my mind stayed steady. The desert whispered to stop, promising rest, but I had already learned. Rest is just surrender wearing a gentle face. I followed the trail. The sand shifted beneath me like molten glass. The wind cracked in my ears, the ground humming with heat. Sometimes mirages appeared, flickers of shade, distant shapes that looked like trees or people, but they melted as I approached. Still, I walked. As I moved, memories drifted in and out like the wind itself. Lisa as a child, running in a blue dress. Lisa as an adult, turning away in the courtroom of her own lies. Each memory hurt, but the pain had changed. It was no longer poison, it was fuel. Every step was a rebellion against the story she'd written for me. The sun climbed higher, my strength faltered. I tore the scarf from my head, pressed it to my face, tasted salt and dust. Time lost shape. The heat distorted the world into waves. Then, the texture under my feet changed. Rough, solid, fragments of black stone. The sand thinned, and ahead a glimmer, not illusion, but asphalt. A road. I fell to my knees, laughter and sobs tangled together. The sound was strange, half human, half divine. I pressed my palms to the burning ground, whispering thanks to no one and everything. When I looked back, the desert stretched vast and unforgiving, but it no longer wanted to swallow me. It was releasing me. And that's when I understood. The trail I'd followed wasn't hers. It was mine. Because every mark in the sand told the story of a woman who refused to die where she was left. And even without witnesses, the desert knew. It had seen what no daughter ever did, the silent power of a mother finding her way home. The sun was sinking again when I heard it, a low, distant rumble that vibrated through the ground. At first, I thought it was another mirage of sound, a cruel trick of exhaustion. But no, the noise grew stronger, steadier, real. My breath caught. I turned toward the horizon, and there it was. A red truck, massive and weathered, cutting through the heat waves like a moving mountain. Its headlights flashed, its engine roared, a heartbeat in the silence of death. I stumbled toward the road, waving both arms, throat too dry for a scream. The driver saw me. Tires screeched, dust rose, and the truck shuddered to a halt a few feet away. The door creaked open and a man climbed down, tall, sunburned, eyes kind. "Jesus Christ," he muttered, running toward me with a water bottle. "Ma'am, you're alive?" His name was Jack Miller, 30 years behind the wheel, a widower, father of 2. His hands were rough as rope, but gentle as prayer. "Drink slow," he said, guiding the bottle to my lips. The water hit my tongue like salvation, cold, metallic, alive. I closed my eyes, swallowing tears with every sip. "Who did this to you?" he asked softly. I hesitated, then whispered, "My daughter." He didn't flinch, didn't question, just nodded, solemn. "Some folks get lost in the desert," he said. "Others become it." He helped me into the cab. The seat smelled of leather, fuel, and coffee gone bitter. The dashboard glowed faintly in the dusk. As the engine rumbled back to life, the desert began to fade behind us, its endless gold swallowed by twilight. Jack didn't ask more. He just drove, hands steady, silence kind. Every so often, he'd glance my way and say, "You're a lucky one, ma'am. Most don't make it out." I looked out the window and murmured, "Not luck, instinct." Hours passed. The first lights of Tucson flickered in the distance like scattered stars reborn. The sight broke me. I cried, not from pain, but from the shock of being back where sound and color still existed. When we reached the police station, Jack parked and walked me inside. The air conditioning was sharp, sterile. A man in a suit approached, eyes sharp but warm. "Detective Ramirez," he introduced himself. "You must be Mrs. Holloway. You're safe now." I told him everything, every mile, every tear, every betrayal. He listened without interrupting. When I handed him the phone and the message, his face hardened. "This changes everything," he said. "You weren't abandoned. You were hunted." Jack stood by the door, hat in hand. When the paperwork began, he stepped closer, placing the hat before me. "For luck," he said quietly. "To remind you there are still roads that lead home." He left, and through the glass I watched his red truck disappear into the night. The sound of its engine faded, but inside me, something new began to hum, a steady rhythm, like life returning. That night, I slept on a hard bench in the station, clutching the silver necklace and Jack's hat. For the first time in days, I wasn't surrounded by sand. I was surrounded by proof that kindness still existed. And before closing my eyes, I whispered, "Maybe the miracle isn't surviving. Maybe it's being found, when the world already thought you were gone." Coming back to the city felt like waking from a nightmare, only to realize the world had kept moving without you. Tucson was alive. Horns, chatter, the smell of food drifting through the air, and all of it felt almost offensive in its normality. I sat in the back of a police car, watching streetlights blur past, people rushing across crosswalks, faces lit by neon. The world pulsed with noise, but inside me there was only stillness. Half of me felt anger that life went on. The other half, gratitude that mine still had a pulse. Detective Ramirez led me into a bright, sterile room at the precinct. The air smelled like coffee and paper, too clean, too awake. "Please, Mrs. Holloway," he said gently, pulling out a chair. "Tell me everything." So I did. Every word, every mile, every sound of that engine leaving. He listened in silence, pen moving across his notebook. When I showed him the phone, when he read the message, "It's done. She won't be a problem anymore." His jaw tightened. He called for a technician who took the phone away. Minutes later, the man returned with a laptop, whispering something to Ramirez. The detective's eyes narrowed as he read the screen, then lifted his gaze to me. "Mrs. Holloway," he said carefully, "the number that sent that message belongs to a man named Richard Cole, the insurance broker handling your life policy." My stomach dropped. "Richard?" I whispered. He was a family friend." Ramirez nodded grimly. "There have been recent transfers from his account to your daughter's. Large ones. Regular. The first payment happened just after your policy was renewed." For a moment, the world shrank to a pinpoint. My hands went numb. My chest felt hollow. My daughter hadn't left me in panic. She had sold me. Not out of hatred, but for profit. I pressed my palms to the cold metal table, the silver necklace brushing my skin. Its weight anchored me. Its chill stung like truth. I remembered the look on Lisa's face in the car, calm, distant, resolved, and I realized it hadn't been hesitation. It had been calculation. Ramirez moved closer, resting a hand on my shoulder. "She made her choice, but you're alive, and that changes everything. We'll find her, I promise." His voice was steady, but mine was steadier when I replied, "I don't want revenge, detective. I want the truth to breathe." That night, they brought me to a women's shelter. The room was small, clean sheets, soft light, a mirror on the wall. I sat before it and truly looked at myself for the first time since the desert. My face was cracked with sun, my lips dry, my eyes older, but in them, I saw something fierce. I didn't see a victim. I saw someone who came back. My fingers brushed the necklace. "You tried to bury me, Lisa," I whispered, "but roots grow in the dark." Outside, the sounds of the city carried on. Car horns, laughter, footsteps, each one proof that the world still wanted me in it. And as I drifted into sleep, I made a quiet vow. When I saw her again, I wouldn't seek tears. I'd seek the truth. The call came on a gray morning, the kind that feels heavy with something inevitable. Detective Ramirez's voice was calm but sharp. "Mrs. Holloway, we found your daughter." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My fingers tightened around the phone. "She's at a motel near the border," he continued. "Cash on hand, packed suitcases, a plane ticket. Richard Cole was with her." The world seemed to tilt. I steadied myself, feeling the weight of the silver necklace against my chest. "I want to see her," I said. Ramirez hesitated. "Are you sure? It won't be easy." I swallowed hard. Nothing has been easy. This won't break me. When I arrived at the station, the air buzzed with tension. The smell of old coffee and exhaustion clung to the walls. Cops moved briskly down the hallway, papers in hand, voices low. Ramirez met me at the door and led me into an interrogation room. The light was harsh, the air cold. And there she was, Lisa, my daughter. Her wrists were cuffed to the table, her blonde hair tangled, eyes swollen from crying. She looked up when I entered, her voice trembling. "Hi, Mom." I didn't answer. I walked toward her slowly, each step echoing louder than words. "Why?" I asked simply. She broke. "I didn't think, okay? Richard said it was just to fix things. The debts, the bills, I thought..." "Fix things?" I interrupted. My voice was steady, but my heart thundered. "You left me to die in the middle of nowhere, Lisa. You looked back. I saw you." Her face crumpled. "I regretted it the moment I drove off. I wanted to turn back, I swear." "But you didn't." Silence filled the room. Ramirez stood quietly by the door, arms crossed, eyes lowered in respect. I studied her face, searching for traces of the little girl who once clung to my hand during storms, who whispered that I was her home. But all I saw now was a woman hollowed out by greed and guilt. "You killed me, Lisa," I said softly. "But the desert gave me back. And what it taught me is that love without respect is poison." She sobbed harder now, shoulders shaking, her tears darkening the fabric of her prison uniform. For a fleeting moment, I wanted to reach out, to hold her. But forgiveness isn't born from denial. It's born from truth. "I don't want to see you rot," I continued. "I want you to understand. Freedom means nothing if you don't know what it costs." Her voice cracked. "Do you still love me?" I paused. The room seemed to hold its breath. "Love," I said quietly, "is what remains after hate is gone. So yes, I do, but not the same way." I turned and walked toward the door. The sound of the latch closing behind me was gentle, but it echoed like thunder. In the hallway, Ramirez caught up. "She'll face the charges," he said. "She already is," I replied. "She just doesn't know it yet." Outside, the clouds had broken open, and the first drops of rain kissed my face. I tilted my head to the sky, breathing deeply. For the first time, it didn't hurt. Because sometimes, justice isn't watching someone else suffer. It's looking into the eyes of your destroyer and realizing you've survived them. The courthouse was full, wooden benches creaking under the weight of reporters, cameras flashing like trapped lightning. Whispers buzzed through the air, the kind of anticipation that feeds on tragedy. At the front, under the pale light, sat Lisa and Richard Cole, hands cuffed, faces drained of color. I was in the first row, the silver necklace resting on my chest like both scar and metal. There was no fear left in me, only a stillness that comes after surviving the storm. The judge, a tall man with gray hair and a voice made for truth, called the room to order. "State of Arizona versus Lisa Cole and Richard Cole," he said, his tone slicing through the tension. Each word was a stone thrown into deep water, sending ripples that reached every corner of the room. The prosecutor stood, young, sharp-eyed, voice like steel. "Your Honor, this case isn't just about fraud or abandonment. It's about betrayal, the betrayal of blood. A daughter who conspired to let her mother die in the desert for money. But her mother survived. This is not a story of crime alone. It's a story of moral collapse and resurrection." The words hung in the air. You could hear the click of a pen, the rustle of someone swallowing. Lisa kept her head bowed, tears dripping silently onto her hands. When the evidence appeared, the phone, the messages, the bank transfers, her shoulders shook. The prosecutor turned toward her. "Mrs. Cole, did you or did you not abandon your mother in the desert with intent to profit from her death?" Lisa lifted her head. Her face was pale, streaked with mascara. I didn't mean for it to go that far. Richard said no one would get hurt. He said it was only to make things easier. I was desperate." The judge leaned forward, eyes steady. "Desperation," he said slowly, "doesn't excuse inhumanity." The defense tried to argue, but it didn't matter. The truth was already in the room, heavy, undeniable. Then came my turn. The judge called my name, and the sound of it echoed through the chamber like something ancient. I rose, every step deliberate, and placed my hands on the witness stand. The wood was cold, grounding. "Mrs. Holloway," the judge said, "you may speak." I took a breath. "I didn't come here for vengeance," I said. "I came so the truth would have a voice. My daughter didn't kill me, but she tried to erase me. The desert taught me something, Your Honor. Truth is like the sun. You can close your eyes, but it rises anyway." Silence. Then the faint sound of someone crying in the back. The judge's gaze softened. "Is there anything else you wish to say?" "Yes," I said quietly. "I forgive her. But forgiveness isn't forgetting. It's freedom." The judge nodded, then turned to the defendants. "Lisa Cole," he said, voice resolute, "for attempted fraud, willful abandonment, and conspiracy, this court sentences you to 8 years in prison. Richard Cole, for coercion and criminal conspiracy, 12 years. No applause, no celebration. Only silence, the kind that cleanses, not condemns. When I stepped outside, the sun struck my face. A reporter hurried toward me. "Mrs. Holloway, how do you feel now that justice is served?" I looked up, squinting against the light. "Justice isn't victory," I said. "It's balance, and sometimes balance begins with forgiveness." She lowered the microphone, wordless. I walked on, the wind lifting my hair, the necklace glinting against my skin. The law had closed its chapter, but my soul's reckoning had just begun. Months passed after the trial, and as the noise faded, the interviews, the headlines, the endless questions, what remained was silence. A familiar silence, the kind that sounds like wind scraping sand. One morning I felt it, a pull, deep and quiet. The desert was calling me back, not as an enemy this time, but as a witness waiting for closure. I packed light, a bottle of water, a scarf, a small wooden box. Inside it, the silver necklace, clean, gleaming, heavier with meaning. I drove for hours through the same stretch of highway that once felt endless, but now it looked smaller, tamer. The fear was gone, the sun was still ruthless, but I no longer saw it as punishment. It was light, simple, honest. When I reached the spot, the world seemed to hold its breath. No sound, no birds, just the hum of the earth under the weight of heat. I walked across the sand, slow, deliberate, each step a heartbeat, each breath a memory. The same rock where I had once crouched, trembling through the night, waited for me. I sat down. The wind circled gently, warm at first, then cool. "You saw me break," I whispered into the vastness. Now watch me whole. I opened the box. The necklace caught the sunlight and scattered it into tiny stars across the sand. I ran my fingers over the words engraved on the back. So you'll never lose your way from me. Once those words chained me. Now they set me free. I smiled, not with sadness, but with peace. I didn't lose my way, Lisa. I just had to find it alone. Carefully, I dug a small hole beneath the rock and placed the necklace inside, wrapped in white cloth. Stay here, I murmured. Like the love that was, and the lesson that remains. The wind rose, swirling around me in soft spirals, lifting grains of sand into a golden halo. I closed my eyes and felt them kiss my skin. It wasn't the desert testing me this time. It was blessing me. Tears came easily, not from pain, but from release. They cooled the heat on my cheeks as I whispered, "Thank you for breaking me," because that's how I learned to rebuild. When I stood, the sun had already begun to set. The sky burned with copper and violet, and the desert seemed to exhale, vast and alive. I turned toward the car and didn't look back, not because I was leaving something behind, but because I had already carried it with me. As I started the engine, I caught my reflection in the mirror. The same eyes, the same face, but softer, stronger, alive. The desert was no longer my grave. It was my altar. And the woman driving away from it was no longer a survivor. She was reborn. The first call came from an unknown number. The voice on the other end was calm, respectful. "Mrs. Holloway, this is Mark Ellison from Arizona today. Your story? It's spreading. People are talking about it. Could we meet?" I hesitated. Not because I feared the attention, but because I'd spent so long surviving in silence that speaking felt foreign. Still, something inside whispered that maybe my story could be more than pain. Maybe it could become a map for someone else. We met at a quiet cafe near the community center where I'd started volunteering. Mark was young, earnest, with ink stains on his fingers and a worn-out notebook. He didn't look at me like a headline. He looked like someone trying to understand. After a moment of small talk, he hit record. "What did you feel?" he asked softly. "The moment you realized the car wasn't coming back?" The question sliced through me, but I didn't flinch. "I felt the world go silent," I said. And in that silence, for the first time in my life, I heard myself. He nodded, eyes steady. "And when you saw the sunrise the next morning?" "I saw God," I said, "not the one people pray to in churches, the one that lives inside resilience." The interview lasted nearly 3 hours. We spoke of betrayal, of survival, of forgiveness. He listened the way people rarely do, with patience. When it ended, he sat quietly for a long time before saying, "People need this story. They need to know that strength doesn't come from being unbroken, but from surviving the break." 3 days later, the article was published. The mother who survived the desert and forgave the daughter who left her to die. The story spread like wildfire. Calls poured in from across the country, reporters, networks, strangers. But beyond the noise came letters. Dozens at first, then hundreds. Women writing from shelters, prisons, hospitals. They said I was abandoned too. "Your story gave me courage. You reminded me I still matter." When a national TV show invited me to speak, I agreed. Under the blinding studio lights, the host asked, "Grace, what did the desert teach you?" I smiled. That solitude isn't punishment, it's preparation for freedom. The audience fell silent. Then applause, slow, sincere, full of recognition. I looked out and saw faces wet with tears, not of pity, but of understanding. Soon after, the community center overflowed. Women came from miles away, widows, mothers, daughters estranged. Together, we created the Silver Necklace Project, a network to help abandoned and at-risk mothers rebuild their lives. We taught survival skills, self-defense, breathing, healing. We taught each other hope. When Mark returned months later with a camera crew, he asked, "Do you still wear the necklace?" I touched my chest and smiled. No, it's where it belongs. But what it stands for, that stays right here. The story reached millions, and one night, sitting alone on my porch, I looked up at the desert sky and finally understood. I hadn't just survived it. I'd transformed it, turned my suffering into a bridge for others to cross. The world no longer saw me as the woman left to die. It saw me as proof that even the most barren places can bloom. The days after the interview carried a new kind of silence, the peaceful kind, the one that follows healing. I woke early each morning, opened the curtains, and let the sunlight in. The same sun that once burned my skin now warmed the walls of my home like an old friend returning to make amends. The air smelled of coffee and soil, and every breath felt like a quiet victory. The Silver Necklace Project began to grow roots deeper than I ever imagined. What started as 4 folding chairs and a single metal table became a room full of voices, laughter, tears, and the rustling sound of stories being shared for the first time. Women came from across Arizona, some carrying scars, others carrying silence. We didn't promise healing overnight. We promised company in the desert. And together, that was enough. Jack, the truck driver, showed up now and then with donations, boxes of water bottles, scarves, sun hats. For the road warriors, he'd joke, tipping his hat. Detective Ramirez came too, offering free workshops on self-protection and financial safety. On the wall near the entrance, we hung dozens of small silver charms, each one representing a woman who had found her way back to herself. When the wind blew through the open windows, they tinkled softly, sounding like applause from angels. At home, my life settled into rituals: brewing coffee, watering the plants, writing letters I never sent, especially to Lisa. I told her about the project, about the women, about how love could change shape without disappearing. There was no bitterness left in my words, only understanding. Sometimes forgiveness doesn't come like thunder. It comes like sunrise, slow, certain, unstoppable. Letters arrived daily, some from women who escaped abuse, others from daughters asking how to reconnect. They called me the Desert Mother. At first, it made me laugh. Then it made me proud. Because that's exactly what I'd become, a woman who learned to bloom where there was no shade. And on quiet nights, when the desert wind whispered outside my window, I'd close my eyes and return to that freezing first night beneath the stars. I could still feel the sand beneath my palms, but it no longer burned. It hummed with memory. Gratitude. The women at the center often said my words healed them, but the truth was, they were healing me. Every story they told became a seed inside me, and every tear they shed watered it. I learned something I wish I'd known all along. No one crosses the desert alone. We walk each other home. Years have passed since the day that engine roared away and left me standing in the dust. Sometimes I still dream of it, the sun, the silence, but when I wake, it's not fear that lingers. It's peace. The wrinkles on my face have deepened, but I wear them proudly. Each one is a map back to the moment I chose life. The desert no longer haunts me. It walks beside me, quiet, steady, a reminder that even emptiness can be sacred. Last week, a letter arrived. The paper was worn, the handwriting trembling but familiar, a prison stamp in the corner. I didn't have to read the name to know who it was. I sat on the porch, the sky glowing gold with evening light, and unfolded it carefully. "Mom," it began, "time here is dry, like the desert. But I've learned that the sun doesn't punish. It reveals. If there's still room in your heart, please forgive me." The words moved through me like warm wind, heavy, but cleansing. I closed my eyes and, for a fleeting second, saw her again as a little girl, laughing barefoot through the garden. I took a blank page and wrote slowly, deliberately, "I forgive you, my daughter. But forgiveness doesn't erase, it transforms. May the sun rise for you, too." Before sealing the envelope, I slipped a small silver pendant inside, just like the ones we give out at the Silver Necklace Project. A symbol, not of forgetting, but of cycles completed. Later that day, I walked out to the open field behind my house. The air was thick with the scent of heat and memory. From my pocket, I pulled out a smooth stone I had carried since that first journey. Kneeling, I placed it on the ground. "Here," I whispered, "is where the pain ends, and the legacy begins." As the sun sank beyond the horizon, I understood something simple yet immense. Love, when it matures, stops being a cage, it becomes a path. Forgiveness is not weakness. It's the courage to breathe without the weight of yesterday. And no woman is defined by what she lost, but by what she chose to become after. If this story touched you, leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to remember that dawn still comes. And tell me in the comments, what was your desert, and what helped you cross it? Because the desert is never the end. It's the place where the sun finds you and gives you back your life.